Yo, what's going on, guys? Crispy Flakes here. Welcome to Extra Crispy. For today's video, we are going to be ranking the NBA's top 10 point guards of the 2010s. So this is a video about one of my favorite basketball personalities, Dom2K. I will say this dude is very intelligent when it comes to the game of basketball, so I am expecting actually a really solid list here. Also, if you guys are wondering, my girlfriend got me a new shirt. You weren't wondering, but I'm going to tell you anyway. It says, basketball is my favorite season. It's very comfy, guys. It's very comfy, man. You're going to see it for, quite a few videos this winter. So, okay, here we go, man. Let's go ahead. I'll get going on this video. Yeah, okay. It's got 5.3K likes, only 145 dislikes. So my guess is that it is pretty accurate.
Why not? Why can't I be the MVP?
See where D Rose is listed.
Why can't I be the best player in the league?
He'd be number one if he didn't get injured. He would be number one if he didn't get injured. NBA 2010s. Yeah.
You can't please anybody with top 10 lists.
True.
Ever, but I like my point guard list. I really do. I saw some other ones out there and I definitely have some differences. So let's go ahead and jump into why.
Magic Johnson, number 10. We didn't make him over. Oh, okay.
And I'm gonna have to justify putting Rose on this list, aren't I? I just have this suspicion that there's people out there that are gonna want an answer.
Youngest
okay,
MVP.
Well, here's mine. First of all, it has to do with the list of the point guards that were sitting outside of the top 10. When I put them up against Rose, they either had similar problems including injuries, Rose outweighed them by the way that he started the 2010s,
I'm gonna guess Darren Williams.
Or his overall body of work when you weigh the start of the 2010s and what he's been able to do since then just simply outweighed what these guys outside of the top 10 did. Rose, believe it or not, remember it or not, he has an MVP. It's one of the things that nearly reserves his spot in the Basketball Hall of Fame because there's not a whole lot a player needs to do on top of an MVP to make it there. And then when you're talking about
being an MVP and not getting into the Hall of Fame,
it is extremely difficult to just discount an MVP that was won during said decade. But okay, the things we know aside, I think a little bit of how Rose's career has went throughout the 2010s has been overblown because people seem to
I would say if Derrick Rose never came back from his injury like he has and started averaging 18 points per game, you can make a case for not being not being in the Hall of Fame just because you have like some good seasons, win the MVP and stuff, and then you just don't do anything else. That's understandable, but I just think he's got to be in it now. He's simply got to be a Hall of Famer.
To forget that Rose's decline was not as steep as they really think. He
it really wasn't.
Go from being an MVP to a bench warmer averaging 5 to 9 points. So he had a very nice sophomore year, which was the start of the 2010s. That was the year 2010. Wins an MVP the next year. Plays sparingly in 2012, but is still one of the best players up until that ACL puts him out for good.
He's been great anywhere you've gone.
From the 2015 season to where we last left off in 2019, he averages 17 points and 4 assists. Now, with a lot of missed games sprinkled in there for sure, he just disappeared from Cleveland at one time, but despite the missed games and the absences in 2014 and 2018,
look at that
and
jump
2014
shot.
Obviously, he never quite fell all the way off the cliff. As a matter of fact, 2019 was pretty much his best season in the midst of all this since the injuries happened. And now he's had a pretty impressive showing for the Detroit Pistons in the preseason.
Biggest issue with Derrick Rose is that people kind of sleep on him. Well, for one, because of the injuries and stuff like that, and just not playing a full 82 game season. But also, I think it's that teams in general are looking at Derrick Rose and they're just afraid to play him for too many games, because just reoccurring injuries and stuff. So I don't know. It's kind of a strange thing going on with him, but I'll see how many games he plays for Detroit this year. I'll get back to you. I'm sure you'll watch too, though.
So when on the court, he's been a serviceable point guard. And I think when you add that onto what he did at the start of the 2010s, it's very hard to keep him out of the top 10. Now, again, this is the 10th spot. With the games that he missed, with the seasons that he missed, I don't believe you can put him any higher than that.
I agree.
It gets very difficult
10th
to
is
justify,
good.
But a top 10 spot for Rose, I think that's doable.
Magic Johnson, number 9.
Here's a name that I suspect many of you were not looking to see on this list because a lot of you weren't even checking for Tony Parker when he was playing until the postseason came around. Yet, he was very effective for about half of the 2010s, so this is not some situation where
how many championships they get in there in that era, or in that time?
Faded within the first 2 years. No, he actually had 3 All-Star appearances in the 2010s, and even through 2011 and 2010 when he didn't make the team, he had All-Star level numbers. From the start of the decade up until 2015, Tony Parker was giving you 17 points and 6 assists a game on a team that was routinely competing. on a team that was routinely contending. They made the finals in 13 and 14, nearly winning both, but
no better point guard in the paint.
And as late as 2017, he was having
no better floater
nice playoff run up
whoever
until he
exists.
blew out his quad, and that was effectively the end of his career. So my point with all this is that Tony Parker was routinely underrated, and I believe he was underrated to the point that people think he just wasn't much of a factor as the 2010s wore on, when in reality it was more.
I gotta see what point guards are not on the list too. Like let's have to think about the end of the video. But yeah, like Tony Parker I think is justifiable.
Of an abrupt ending closer to the end. While it's true that his best days predate the 2010s, those were throughout the 2000s. He definitely accomplished enough throughout this decade to crack the top 10. And while I understand his best days were in another decade, that's why I'm giving him the 9th spot, and I'm not moving him above some of these other guys.
Magic Johnson number, okay.
If you're looking at a player that had 5
LOWRY,
All-Star appearances in one decade, and was also the starting point guard on a championship team that was routinely near the top of its conference before that, it's impossible not to have him in the top 10.
I wasn't expecting it.
I clearly think there are more individually talented players than Kyle Lowry, while I clearly understand his struggles in the playoffs before he was able to nab a championship this year.
Before Kawhi nabbed him a championship,
for a top 10 spot at his position. The numbers and the accolades are there, but in terms of individual talent, that's exactly why he got the 8th spot, because I would put him above Parker and Rose, who definitely had better days closer to the start of the 2010s. However, every single point guard in front of Lowry, whether you're talking about talent or just who I want to start a franchise with, yeah, I would take all of them first. Cardiac KEMBA was drafted in the year
Walker,
2011,
number 7,
and he's really been nothing but a healthy bucket ever since then. He's rarely played below 79 games.
Yeah, I guess Darren Williams would not be on this list, because like he's like closer to like maybe like tail end, like tail beginning. I don't know if that makes sense, man. Like 2010, like before that, he was kind of like his prime time.
And he's given
then
you
became a legit trash
can,
can,
both scoring and facilitating on teams that have not been that great, culminating in what was his best year last year at 26 points a game with 6 assists. A lot of people like to argue that when you're on a bad team and you're the star, it's easy to put up numbers, but I also implore those people to look at the fact that when you're putting up nearly 20 shots a game on a team that doesn't have another star to relieve defensive pressure off of you, and then you still wind up looking talented, that speaks for something, especially as a point guard. Point guards have a lot of duties as is, so to, on top of those, carry the scoring load in a situation
here's what KEMBA does on Boston.
Well, that's why I'm excited to see him on the floor with a team that has competent offensive players.
If Boston doesn't do shit though, that's gonna hurt his legacy.
Wall has averaged 20 points, 10 assists, and 2 steals throughout this entire decade.
I agree.
He drew 5 All-Star appearances, was routinely being
I don't know if I agree with Wall over KEMBA though, just because like KEMBA had been doing it the entire decade. Wait, when was he drafted? I didn't hear what he said was drafted. But with John Wall is like he has been like kind of off the past few seasons. But even when he plays though, John Wall still puts up great numbers. It's an interesting one.
Talked about as one of the best point guards in his conference, and it's not very difficult to see what went wrong with the accomplishment side of his career. He played for the Wizards. I think Wall would have probably gotten a lot more clout if it was him that had been able to team up with Kevin Durant or LeBron James.
That's a good point.
He would have wound up more efficient, his defense would have been more appreciated, as well as his playmaking.
He's a number 2, not number 1.
Outcome is about where he's drafted. So while we never really got to see him on a main stage, I believe that his talent and all-star appearances combined with his consistency throughout the decade is enough to justify a 6th spot.
John Wall's going to end up ring chasing one of these years, and it's going to be awesome to watch. It's going to be awesome to watch. I ain't going to lie.
Damian Lillard has really not disappointed on any front throughout the 2010s, ever since he was drafted. His scoring has been phenomenal, same goes with his playmaking, his record in clutch situations, but the one most underrated thing about Lillard, and I hope it's
got Mike Conley on this list. I think Mike Conley deserves a spot.
Everybody left him. Wesley Matthews, Nick Batum, LaMarcus Aldridge. They were all part of what was a very dangerous Portland team, and all at once in that summer, his unique situation left. The unique situation of a very talented player joining what was already a talented team, or having a talented team that early, because they weren't like that the very first year. However, since his rookie season, they haven't missed
KYRIE,
the
Westbrook
once, despite that massive roster shakeup. And on top
Reggie
of
Jackson,
that,
maybe?
every year that the Blazers have gone out in the playoffs, and besides 2, they're mostly losing to very superior teams. The Wolves Warriors a couple of times, the San Antonio Spurs. The only time I've ever felt kind of disappointed on a Lillard-led playoff team was against the Pelicans and maybe against the Grizzlies. And then again, not even really, because the 2015 Grizzlies were fire. Lillard has only missed an All-NBA team one time since.
Oh, we're gonna have Kyrie on here for sure.
You can argue that two
definitely
of his
have
All-Star misses in 16 and 17 came from playing in the stacked Western Conference. And despite his usage, he has been remarkably consistent. He's never played less than 73 games in a season. The only thing left for him at this point is to have a team good enough for championship contending, and I believe that would also put him on the stage for MVP,
at least gotta get to the finals.
Just a little ways off. Kyrie Irving quite possibly has the greatest handles in NBA history. He's been one of the better scorers in terms.
Allen Iverson says hello. But really, Kyrie or Curry, man, who got better handles? Seriously, who's got better handles? Iverson, Luke Kennard. I'm gonna say Kyrie then Curry. Okay.
Terms of points scored and efficiency throughout the decade. I believe that his playmaking is fairly underrated since he played with LeBron James and because we're more focused on his handles and scoring. And
he had plenty of people to play make to last season on the Celtics,
he was able to take that clutch factor that he had displayed many times before and show it on the biggest stage. And possibly the biggest stage in NBA history considering what went on in that series and the comeback. Yeah,
that's LeBron, Scottie Pippen right there. That's his Scottie Pippen
same situation that you have. And Kyrie is very fortunate to have had the opportunity to pretty much already solidify himself in NBA history, so not just this decade. He's only missed the All-Star team 2 times, and we forget that he's only 26 years old. It seems like he's been here forever because he entered the league at the age of 19.
Yeah, he was a one and done.
Technically just
didn't really play college, injuries.
So not only do I feel more than comfortable having him at this spot when you combine everything together, but with the possibility of being able to play with a healthy Kevin Durant for the rest of his career, there's a very real
thing about Kyrie is that he knows how to get the best out of your best player, which is why I think he's going to be awesome with Kevin Durant. Like, he's going to take so much pressure off Durant, even like post-injury. He did the same thing with LeBron, and I think that was the issue with the Celtics, is that I find Kyrie to be just like a really great basketball player. I just don't know if he's a really good leader, and which is why he's not higher on this list, probably, you can say. We're going to have Westbrook over Kyrie.
Chance he could add a lot more here. Also, with KD having torn his Achilles, I think his progression through this next part of his career that he wanted, where he kind of wanted to be his own man and show that he could lead his own thing, there's still room there because
it's gonna be interesting. I can't wait. I can't wait till KD's back.
And so more may fall on Kyrie's shoulders. This whole net saga, it remains to be seen, but throughout the 2010s, I think you consider the championship, the clutch performances, a couple of All-NBA teams, the All-Star appearances, and just overall being one of the more talented players in the league, I think that more than justifies a 4th spot.
Number 3.
At this point in
Westbrook
time,
at 3?
Russell Westbrook will remain a player where slander is a counterbalance.
There is a player I am not thinking of. And I'm going to be like, oh my God, I'm the world's biggest dumbass. Who, like Westbrook, Curry, who am I not thinking of? LeBron at point guard? No.
His greatness. His abilities as a point guard thrown into question because of things like IQ, shot selection, unwillingness to change playstyle, all while never being able to deny that he is consistently one of the best point guards in the league, and throughout the 2010s, almost always top 5, and closer to the top of that top 5.
Mario
After
Chalmers?
Kevin Durant leaves the Thunder, he wins an MVP and leads a team to the playoffs who everyone thought was headed straight for like a 9th or 10th seed. And in the meantime, over the next few years, he goes on to average a triple-double 3 straight times after becoming the first player in NBA history since Oscar Robinson to average a triple-double.
Isaiah Thomas could be on,
in fact, that we get bored of the stat. People start to pick it apart and say it's not that important. Yet, he normalized it, and the stats showed that when he was with the Thunder and he had a triple-double, his team won more times than they didn't. I see Russell Westbrook as a great player with great flaws that have been emphasized as the decade wore on. His inability to be efficient at hitting the 3-ball has clearly mattered, and I don't honestly see how that's going to get better now that he's playing with James Harden and is going to need to catch and shoot a lot of the times to be effective.
I think Harden's just going to go down.
He's been one of the best players.
He's going to be the catch and shooter.
His position this entire decade, and it's been consistent despite the knee injuries he was having closer to the start. So with 8 All-Star appearances, 3 straight seasons
wouldn't
with
be Steve Nash,
Chris
Paul,
and 8 NBA teams. Look, you can dislike Russell Westbrook and his play style, but
I said it before he said it.
Him his place at this position throughout this this decade, and
CP3.
I have a suspicion that people would easily put players above him that don't deserve to be just because they like their playstyle better, just because they're more efficient. Westbrook has had his problems, but when his last goal is to become a championship point guard and basically everything else is checked off, I think it speaks for itself.
CP3.
Chris Paul
Yes,
will
sir.
forever have the stain of the Lob City failure on his shoulders. Yet, the numbers show that most of the times, he was one of the only players showing up throughout those playoff runs. He was one of the only players doing their jobs. And despite his absolute best days coming around 08 and 09, his consistency throughout the 2010s cannot be denied. He tallied 7 All-Star appearances throughout the decade and was pretty much...
You know, it can't be denied, but was he better than Westbrook? I guess if we look at like accolades and stuff like that, because like both didn't really have playoff success. Stat-wise, I mean, you know, Russell, I'll say CP3 more of a natural pure point guard, whatever that means anymore, where Westbrook triple-double machine. So, I don't know. I think there's an argument to be had right there.
Always good for an efficient double-double. And spanning from the start of the decade, he led the league in steals 4 straight times. So his value was never a secret. He was pretty much always giving you scoring, defense, and playmaking at a superstar level. Literally the only thing that was missing throughout the 2010s was health. It was either him or Blake Griffin hurt, or some other key player hurt, and that
bitch-ass small forward on the Clippers, always.
Runs, as you can see in my Clippers curse
Same
video.
old-ass Paul Pierce.
But without those, they had a very realistic path to a title multiple times.
Put the small forward out there right now, man. And fucking Paul Pierce! Yeah.
Oh, it's really just a very unfortunate career, especially when you consider he's now wound up on a team that doesn't exactly have a use for him, and this is likely going to be the end of his career. But leading up to this point, the numbers he put up, the All-Star appearances, the 13 All-League teams between
he could ring Chase at 38
defensive squads, Paul was quite literally always the real deal, and fate really just was not on his side. The only reason he wouldn't be called the best point guard of this decade is because somebody came up very quickly and stole his thunder, and he was not
Miller.
the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Steph Curry.
Nobody should ever have to justify to you why Steph Curry is the greatest point guard of the 2010s, because the low-hanging fruit would be to say, oh, he wasn't even an all-star until 2014, then he started winning in 2015, so if you're comparing his resume to Chris Paul, who was there from the start, then how could you possibly have Curry before him? And it's because Curry simply did everything you could possibly do in that 5-year span. MVPs, all types of records, scoring records, efficiency, changing the game, championships. It's just decorated. That one 5-year span might be more decorated than any 5-year span in history for an individual player. And that's what makes this pick even more correct in my mind.
I had nothing to say about Curry.
He did so much in a short time.
Yeah, he deserves
because
it.
At the beginning of the 2010s, all you knew is you were on NBA TV, and on the ticker in the bottom of the screen, you saw Curry having another ankle operation, another ankle problem, and you just kind of wrote him off as that kid that could shoot but has very frail ankles.
I wrote him off. Not gonna lie, man.
This decade was going to close, and he's not even done yet. He just turned 30 years old. There's still more for him to do. There's more for him to add on top.
He could literally be he could literally be Del Curry until he's 50, and just be a spot up 3-point shooter and just play like his dad did.
But everything we just saw since the year 2015. Chris Paul was the definition of supreme consistency at the point guard position, but Curry was the definition of explosive success. And you could just come at this from any angle that you wanted. 6 All-NBA teams, the unanimous MVP, the 3 rings, being the best or one of the best players on a team that went to 5 straight finals, his impact on the game. I almost feel like if I was putting Chris Paul over Steph Curry just because he was around longer, and I don't know, I just feel like
that wouldn't be right.
Edgy. Steph Curry simply succeeded at way too much this decade not to be considered the best point guard of it, and he's still got a ways to go. So that is how I round.
Okay, yeah, I would say it was very good ranking. Like, I don't really have any, gripes with it whatsoever. The one player I could argue that could potentially be on this list is Mike Conley, and that's just because I feel like Mike Conley's been consistent his entire career, and really even, yeah, he's not won a championship, but he's stayed healthy. Going back to those teams with Marcus Gasol, Zach Randolph, those were some of the grittiest teams out there. There was always a team you didn't want to see in the playoffs. So I see Mike Conley maybe being top 10 here, but, all the guys he said, I don't really got any big arguments for. Because even Kyle Lowry has been, also a very good, consistent point guard and does have the championship. So, give Mike Conley, Kawhi Leonard probably would have one too. So, yeah. Anyway, really good video. I'm going to have a link to it in the description below, guys. A link to Dom2K's channel. Thank you all so much for watching. Peace out.